Welcome to the Sweat, ladies and gentlemen, where we are giving you a healthy dose of Monday motivation to not suck in fantasy sports. My wonderful co-host goes by the name of Jessie Coffield. People call me Emerson, and we are happy to have you here with us today.
We're also ecstatic to have our NFL panel kicking off the show. Reed Fowler, the fantasy girl, Rosalie Michaels, and Ian Harditz of the Action Network. And we're putting a fantasy spin on some of the top NFL news.
Yeah, starting with wide receiver Josh Gordon here, guys. The newest New England Patriot. Typical, I know. New England lands him in a trade with the Browns, sending a fifth-round pick to Cleveland. And if this dude can stay clean, this is a frightening scenario for everyone facing the Pats. Yeah, that's a big F. What can this change of scenery do for Gordon's value here, Reed?
I mean, why you get one of the best, if not the best, passer in the NFL right now with Tom Brady. I mean, he's a guy that can easily elevate anybody's game. Belichick, Josh Daniels, right? We saw this in 2007. Now, making that comparison right now to Randy Moss is extremely premature. He still has to learn the playbook. He still has to go through and get back in shape, because really he's only played one game, and we've seen him only get 3 targets in that game, 3 catches and a touchdown. This guy is one of the best deep threats when he's on the field. When you look at Chris Hogan and these other guys, yeah, they lose some targets, but Chris Hogan not so much, right? We saw him have that wide receiver 2 upside when Brandon Cooks was on the field last year, and Gordon is an upgrade from Brandon Cooks, if you ask me, if he's playing at his optimal efficiency. So this does downgrade a little bit in terms of targets, but not in terms of efficiency.
Yeah, Ian, it's a complicated and complex playbook that this guy is going to have to learn. Adam Schefter tweeting out, though, you know, there were the rumors about the strained hamstring, that it's healthy enough he could play Sunday night against the Lions. Would you play him? Would you start him on Sunday night?
I think you got to at least consider it. I mean, we're talking about one of 11 receivers in NFL history here that's ever averaged over 75 receiving yards per game. I mean, Reed was talking about the Randy Moss comparison. It's a little absurd, but at the same time, it really is the closest thing the Patriots have had to it since Randy Moss. I mean, once Julian Edelman's back after the suspension, we're going to be looking at probably the closest thing they've had to Wes Welker and Randy Moss since they've had the actual things. I mean, right now, Gordon is their biggest and maybe the fastest receiver they're going to be trotting out there. And, I mean, at this point, you got to at least consider putting him out there when he's got the best quarterback of his career. So, I mean, it remains to be seen if he'll be getting 90% of snaps or not with that hobbled hamstring. But, I mean, I don't want to wait too long.
Rosalie, think about this. Week 5 preview here. Tom Brady throwing to Josh Gordon, Gronk, Edelman, Hogan. What do you expect out of Gordon in New England? Or how soon, I guess, should you expect production out of him?
You know, the big question here is, how is his health both mentally and physically, right? I mean, we saw a lot of teams go after him as soon as they heard that the Browns were going to release him. That is interesting to me. The fact that many teams, when Des Bryant is out there and nobody seems to want him, and then that many teams want this hobbled guy that's got these issues, that's interesting to me. But I think that for him, he landed in the best spot possible. If anybody can get him right, it's Belichick, right? Like we said, everybody keeps bringing up Randy Moss, and I think that we identify with Randy Moss and Josh Gordon because Randy Moss was such a train wreck going in there. But yeah, I think looking ahead to week 5, if Josh Gordon is healthy and can play, and let's see how quickly he picks up that playbook, I think he just adds another arsenal to Tom Brady's weapon. So it's a nightmare for anybody that goes up against him.
Yeah, no word yet on if Tom Brady is going to give Josh Gordon number 12.
Yeah, I think that's safe to say that's not going to happen. In Philadelphia, Carson Wentz has been medically cleared for contact and will start Sunday's game against the Colts. So, Rosalie, what do you expect from Wentz, and what's the fantasy impact he's going to have on this offense?
You know, I think a lot of people are really looking at the fact that Alshon's out, and they're like, well, what are they going to do? And I think that people have seen this Eagles offense under Nick Foles. Nick Foles and Carson Wentz, 2 totally different QBs. And we are forgetting how good Wentz is when he plays. He had 33 touchdowns in 13 games. He was second to only one quarterback in all of the NFL last year in terms of touchdown production. And that was Russell Wilson, and he played 16 games. So He had 34 at 16 games. Carson Wentz had 33. Now, a season long, I own him in a couple of leagues. I'm absolutely going to throw him in against Indy's defense. Daily, let's wait a little while. I think Zach Ertz is very, very excited that Carson Wentz is back, and we're going to see Zach Ertz and some Al Galore. Lots and lots of targets, lots of catches there, and more touchdowns. So, yeah, season long, I'm starting him. Daily, I'm probably waiting a couple of weeks.
Ian, what about you? Season long, obviously he's going to have an impact. Daily, are you looking to use him right away?
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about the number 2 quarterback last year in DraftKings points per game behind only Deshaun Watson. He was also number 2 in a metric we have at Fantasy Lab, plus modest, which basically just measures how many points that player scores above their salary-based expectation. So not only was he scoring a bunch of points, period, but he was scoring way more than his pricing expected him to. As far as his weapons go, though, the Eagles are just so banged up. It's tough to really have too many takeaways other than Nelson Aguilar and Zach Ertz is going to get fed as many targets as possible. Mike Wallace was kind of a popular sleeper pick last week, but he's fractured his ankle, and he's going to be missing an extended period of time. Alshon Jeffrey's still week to week. So I'm all over Carson Wentz in basically any fantasy format, and I think we're going to see a ton of his targets going straight to Aguilar and Ertz.
Reed, what do you think? What's the impact Wentz is going to have on this Eagles offense?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Ian here. I think when you look at that stack, you don't want to wait too long because if he does well, then that GPP stack potentially is not going to be there anymore, right? If Wentz and Aguilar and these guys hook up and Ertz obviously hook up for a lot of points, you might not get that depressed ownership. People still think this is a late injury. So people, people think, well, yeah, just like Rosalie was saying, let's just wait to see how it goes. But if you're playing in those tournaments, look, Aguilar is sandwiched between Fuller and Sanders. I mean, that's a really nice spot if you want that depressed ownership, if you want that target upside. And Ertz is an absolute, he's going to get so many targets because that was his favorite guy, Wentz's favorite guy last year. So I think in season long, yeah, you can definitely fire up Wentz. If you took him, in those later rounds, potentially waiting for him to come out, now you can plug him in into DFS as well and potentially get that nice little stack that a lot of people won't get because you have Garoppolo, you have Breeze above Wentz, and those guys are going to be heavily owned in those plus matchups. So yeah, I like it for DFS as well.
Well, a lot of hungover people out there today, Reed Fowler included, but we're talking players who could regress after a big week 2. Reed, please listen. Starting with Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes, who put up 42 points, preparing to face the San Francisco defense at home. What kind of hangover do you see this kid having, Ian?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of a hangover we really need to expect here. Look, he's not going to throw 6 touchdowns every week or anything, but I mean, the other takeaway other than this Chiefs offense being amazing is how bad their defense is. So I think we're going to be seeing shootouts week after week here. And I mean, we haven't seen Patrick Mahomes in comeback mode yet, but I can't even imagine what that's going to look like on the fantasy sheet. And also, he's only had about 35 rushing yards here through the first 2 weeks. He had 22 rushing touchdowns in his last 25 games at Texas Tech. So this is really a true dual threat quarterback that hasn't even shown off that ability yet. So it sounds weird to say, but I mean, we could even see similar, if not better, Patrick Mahomes production on a week-to-week basis. Obviously, it won't be this consistent, but we still have plenty of big things to come.
Yeah, Reed, how insane is that just to think that we know he's got legs. Like, we know this dude can run, and we have yet to see him do that kind of damage.
I think in the first game we thought, okay, Andy Reid is scheming pretty well, very well for Patrick Mahomes, and then you see him throw 6 touchdowns and put him into tight spots where, they really need that arm strength. You really need the ability to stay in the pocket, and this is what he's doing. Ian's right. He hasn't shown his ability to run yet. And you have San Francisco, who is getting back Reuben Foster after his 2-game suspension. So you think their linebacking core, who's been pretty banged up, Malcolm Smith, has been out for the first couple of weeks, and so that linebacking core has been depleted. Now they get one of their stars back. Remains to be seen how he is. He's still got a condition to get back into game shape. But yeah, I mean, I get potentially fading this guy at 7,000 because he is expensive, and you never really like to pay up at quarterback. But his upside is huge. I mean, 6 touchdowns. He's not going to throw 6 touchdowns, or he's going to go for 100 this year. He's not going to throw that much, but you could easily see another production, a big production out of this guy this week.
Yeah, Rosalie, are you going to pay up $7,000 for Mahomes, thinking you can get similar production, 42 points again?
Yeah, I don't think he's doing 42 points. So instead of a real hangover, this is probably going to be more like just a mild headache. Just because you just wake up in the morning and you know you've been drinking, but it doesn't really hurt all that bad.
Okay.
He's probably still going to be in the 30s fantasy point-wise in this game coming up against San Francisco. I mean, is he going to have, everybody said, is he going to have 6 touchdowns every week? No. But, you know, he could certainly have 3 easily have 3. So yeah, he's probably going to be in the 30s, going to 42. That's going to be difficult, but you know, he's got so many weapons, and I think he doesn't play from behind because it seems like the first play for every Kansas City Chiefs game from now on is going to be long touchdown bomb to Tyreek Hill. So no playing from behind for the Chiefs.
Yeah, that's kind of like when you wake up and you don't feel that bad because then you realize you're still drunk. So that's
just keep drinking.
Just
no,
keep
I'm just
drinking,
kidding.
all right?
Do
Well,
not do that,
keep
kids.
drinking. Guys, what a day for Carolina's Christian McCaffrey. More than 30 points in a losing effort against Atlanta. So what kind of performance do you expect out of him this week against Cincinnati, Reed?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Atlanta, that's where you attack, right? I mean, we've seen pretty key injuries in that first game with Atlanta with Deion Jones, Keanu O'Neal. They're fastest guys, they're cover guys, especially to cover guys like Christian McCaffrey. If you look at what they did in terms of targets and catches, they're 6th and 7th. Atlanta is for opposing running backs. So look at Christian McCaffrey, or excuse me, look at Kamara and Christian McCaffrey. These guys are your PPR running backs, right? Look at what they can do against Atlanta. So to me, I'd like Christian McCaffrey to get that production back. Maybe not do his 15 targets, 14 receptions, but still do really well in that spot against Atlanta.
Ian, what about you? What do you think? What are we going to see out of him against Cincinnati?
Yeah, I think Reed said it. I mean, it was such a good matchup last week. The way Atlanta plays, they just bag opposing offenses to really check the ball down. We've seen them really rank among the worst defenses year after year in receptions and yards allowed. But the Bengals they're in a similar spot. I mean, Vontaze Burfict is still suspended. That's kind of like their Deion Jones-esque impact linebacker. And right now they're a bottom 6 team in receptions and yards allowed to running back. So I could see McCaffrey regressing a little bit, but maybe like we were talking about Mahomes, it might be more of a mild headache than full-fledged hangover this week.
Still drunk, Rosalie, perhaps? We're going to see more good stuff out of McCaffrey?
How did you know? Yeah, you know what? Again, it's same as Patrick Mahomes. You know, McCaffrey is a wide receiver in a running back clothing, right? He has 14 receptions, which is way more than anybody else on that team. So yeah, we're going to see a lot. The pass defense for Cincinnati is 30th in the league so far. So as they said before, they're going to do a lot of checkdowns. Olsen is gone. And so McCaffrey's getting all those looks. So you see a huge difference between when Olsen's in there and when he's not in there as far as how many receptions McCaffrey has. So reception count alone makes him very, very valuable. So I think there's just a mild headache with him as well.
Okay, Reed, we have Michael Thomas, 32 points this past week for the Saints in that insane game against the Browns. The poor Cleveland Browns. Man.
I mean, gosh, they were getting cocky, chanting, "We're gonna tie, we're gonna tie."
No, slow it down, guys.
Getting cocky out there, not so fast, Browns.
You need a kicker first, but this time we're going to focus on Michael Thomas. 32 points in this game, has set an NFL record for most grabs through 2 weeks of the season, 28 catches. So he's like the only target right now that I feel like Drew Brees is looking at. So any chance we're seeing a repeat performance out of him?
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta's defense against receivers, if you just look at the numbers, all right, they're okay, but they haven't really faced anyone like Drew Brees or Michael Thomas. You said it. Michael Thomas saw 30 targets in the first 2 games, and he saw 28 receptions, 134 average yards, and 3 touchdowns. I mean, putting this guy's numbers against the top guys that you probably drafted in season long, you're feeling really good about Michael Thomas. This guy is, as safe a receiver in terms of a 20 to 25 point DK fantasy point floor. And if he gets that touchdown upside, you're dancing in the rain, because Emerson does when he has hangovers on Monday. Yeah. So for me, yeah, absolutely. We just talked about it. Atlanta's defense is depleted. So put this guy in for at least 25 DK fantasy points as a floor going up against this depleted Atlanta defense.
Just to be clear and for the record, I'm fatigued. I'm not hungover.
That's what we call it.
I'm not hungover. Yeah, as we get older, you just move over to fatigue.
Okay.
Ian, $8,900, but it sure seems tempting against this weak defense.
Yeah, I actually like the Falcons cornerbacks. I think Desmond Trufant and Robert Alford are pretty physical in the way they play. But, I mean, when we're talking about a guy like Michael Thomas, it really doesn't matter who you stick on him. One of only 6 receivers to have over 30 targets in the first 2 weeks of the season over the last 25 years. And in 4 career matchups against the Falcons, he's totaled 410 yards and 3 touchdowns. So we've seen him beat this defense before, and now that his targets are at an all-time high, I mean, I'm not going to bet against Michael Thomas in any fantasy format. As his Twitter handle says, you cannot guard Mike.
Well, that's been the case the first 2 weeks of the season. Rosalie, any chance, you thinking he regresses at all, or just Drew Brees is going to keep feeding this dude?
No way. No way. Drew Brees is one thing that if he was one thing, he is a smart quarterback. And he's going to keep going to Michael Thomas because why wouldn't you? The over-under on this game is pretty high, so it's going to be a high-scoring game. And if you look at Michael Thomas's history against the Atlanta Falcons, last 4 games, he's had 31 receptions, 410 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He plays actually better in Atlanta than he does at home against Atlanta. So I think we can reasonably expect 8 receptions, 100 yards, and at least a touchdown. I mean, his floor here is probably about 24, but he could easily score about 40 fantasy points, worth every penny, that Michael Thomas.
All right, thanks, guys. We're going to get your picks for tonight's Seahawks-Bears game coming up. Plus, it's time to chase or fade with the baseball dudes.
Kings Fantasy Flash. I'm Brendan Glasheen. Showdown Captain Contest, Monday Night Football edition. Seahawks at Bears to wrap up Week 2. Player to watch. Seattle wide receiver Tyler Lockett for a few reasons. Number 1, Doug Baldwin out tonight, could be out even longer. Number 2, Lockett comfortably led all Seahawks wideouts with a 98% snap share in Week 1 at the Broncos. And number 3, the Bears allowed a 75-yard touchdown to Randall Cobb last Sunday night. Now, it wasn't a long ball, but Lockett is one of the NFL's top home run threats down the sideline. Recall he caught a 51-yard bomb in Denver last Sunday. There will be for sure some deep ball attempts from Russell Wilson to Lockett, at least attempted. We'll see how it goes. I would try to maneuver your lineups tonight to fit Lockett in them. His standard salary is $8,200, and as your captain, he'll cost you $12,300. Good luck.
Welcome back. We are ready to sweat some baseball with Greg Ehrenberg and Adam Mancuda of Phantom Sports.
Jumping into Slate Talk with Chaser Fade. Greg, Mets SP Zach Wheeler is the cheapest of the 10K price pitchers, but the best option tonight. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, first off, even more important, if I learned anything when I was in college, the surefire cures to a hangover are either cold pizza in the morning or you just never stop drinking.
Gotta agree with the never stop drinking right there. Hot Take City.
Yeah, I really like the pizza idea.
I like. How about
As
both?
you get older, you can't keep drinking.
How about
man.
both? All right, whatever.
Both isn't bad either.
Yeah.
In terms of Wheeler, I'm chasing this one. He's been one of the best pitchers in baseball since the All-Star break. He scored at least 21 DK fantasy points in 7 of his last 8 outings. The Phillies are a little risky because they do hit the ball well at home, but still really high upside target for right-handed pitching. They strike out the 3rd highest rate in baseball, 24.9% against righties. So I think that for the price tag on Wheeler and comparing him to the other high-priced options that I don't really like a whole lot, I think he makes a lot of sense.
All right, he's going to cost you $10,500, Adam. Do you think that he's the best option for those high-priced arms?
I agree completely. Wheeler, 9 of his last 10 starts have been quality starts. Goes against a team that he's very familiar with in the Phillies. The Phillies have been on that losing streak. They basically conceded the NL East now to the Braves. I love Wheeler tonight. I think he's going to have a high strikeout game against those guys that like to hit home runs, but also strike out a ton. So I'll chasing Wheeler tonight as the Mets battle the Phillies.
Well, Brewers outfielder Christian Yelich has Milwaukee pushing for October right now. He's the most expensive hitter on the slate, slugging .700 since the All-Star break. But you should still roster him because he's in a smash spot at home against Cincinnati. Chase or fade, Adam?
I'm actually chasing Yelich, and I don't even think this is a real question because Yelich has been the hottest hitter in baseball. Wheeler's been one of the hottest pitchers. He's definitely been the hottest hitter in the National League since the All-Star break. Think about it this way. 309 batting average at home, 400 on base percentage, 455 against the Reds this year alone with 6 homers, 13 RBIs. The guy's hitting 343 since the All-Star break. He's a top 3 or 4 MVP guy in the National League. You pay up for Yelich, you save the money elsewhere, and look at the other options you have there. Yasiel Puig is the third highest priced outfielder tonight, only $600 less than Yelich. I'm going to pay up for Yelich, save some money elsewhere, and get Yelich in your lineup, and then build out the lineup from there.
All right, so Adam makes some pretty good points there, Greg. Are you going to pay up for Yelich, considering not many options around him that can give you that kind of production?
Yeah, I think I have a new friend here in Adam because I'm agreeing with him again. I'm chasing this one. Since the All-Star break, Yelich leads the National League in home runs with 19, 192 WRC+. He's hit much better at home this year than on the road. Not really all that surprising because Milwaukee, really strong hitters park. And then also pretty favorable matchup against Anthony Desclafini. He's been good in the past, except he's coming off a shoulder injury in the offseason. Got started late, and he really hasn't pitched all that well. Velocity down a little bit, 4.8 ERA, 4.86 FIP. He's allowing a hard contact rate over 40%, so a really strong spot for Yelich again.
All right, agree or disagree, Greg? Rays Rangers is the obvious stack of the night.
Yeah, it's definitely the obvious stack. I'm chasing this one. It's going to be the highest owned, but for really good reason. Highest implied run total on the slate at 10.5 runs. Adrian Sampson is pitching for the Rangers. He's going to be turning 27 years old this month, and if somebody's a 27-year-old rookie, that's very old for a rookie, and the reason is because they weren't very good in the minor leagues. If you look at his minor league numbers, a bunch of years where he actually allowed an ERA over 6, and that was to minor league hitters. So we put him in a really strong hitter's park tonight against a Rays offense that's probably a little bit better than most people think. They've been a decent team this year. This should really be a high-scoring game. Be a little wary of the ownership here, except I think that you have to have some exposure to this one.
Yeah, Adam, Sampson has 9 innings of work in the big leagues, and he has seen 8 runners cross home plate during that time. So does that make this stack the obvious one?
I'm actually going to disagree on this one. So 2 out of 3.
I don't like him anymore.
Let's go.
Oh, all right, come on. We'll talk after. But for me, the reason I'm not going to stack this one is for the Rays pitcher Tyler Glasnow. If you remember, he was traded at the deadline in the Chris Archer trade. Since then, he's only had one really bad start against the Blue Jays, where he gave up 7 earned over 2/3 of an inning. I actually am looking at the Mariners-Astros game for one that might have a lot of runs in that one. If you look, Wade LeBlanc in a couple starts against the Astros has got lit up. 7 earned runs over 4 1/3 innings. He had a relief appearance earlier this year, 2 innings and 4 earned runs. On the other side, you got Valdez going against the Mariners. Nelson Cruz is back tonight. He missed yesterday with an illness. So you got Tanner, Warden, Cruz against that guy who hasn't pitched more than 5 innings in a start. And remember something else against with LeBlanc going against the Astros. That right-handed heavy-hitting lineup for the Astros: Bregman, Correa, Altuve, White, Gaddis. I mean, those guys are looking to wrap up the division. They're motivated. I expect them to put up a large total tonight, so I'd actually stack the Astros. And don't forget about those Mariners either, because they could certainly score runs. So I'm going to go with that one, and hope that Glasnow actually proves me right and gives a good outing against the Rangers tonight.
Yeah, the Stros, a more traditional stack, projected for just shy of 5 runs at home against Seattle, so not a bad one there either. Thanks, guys. Coming up next, though, we've got a footy preview. That's Champions League soccer, not football, for all you uncultured swine. In the meantime, check out Adam Levitan and Brendan Glasheen with Who'd I Miss On?
What's up? I'm Brendan Glasheen for DK Live. It's Who'd I Miss On from Week 2 with Adam Levitan. Check out Levitan's work on DK Live as well as the DK Playbook. For those of you who are new to the segment, we recap Levy's Sunday misses. Sometimes we discuss some guys who he didn't see coming having monster games. This week, though, we're sticking to a trio of misses. First up, Levy, Jags running back TJ Yeldon. Popular play for some folks with Leonard Fournette out. Jacksonville was just super aggressive in the pass game, huh?
Yeah, I think 2 problems with this play. First of all, DraftKings has aggressively priced backup running backs this season. So whereas we used to see when a running back got hurt, we would have his replacement in the 3K, 4K range, sometimes up to 4,500. This week it was totally different. TJ Yeldon was up at 5,600. So it shouldn't have been an automatic plug and play, number one. And number 2, we knew how talented Corey Grant was, and he could easily come in and steal a lot of looks in the pass game and a few carries. And that's exactly what happened. Lowered both the floor and the ceiling for TJ Yeldon. So I think pretty bad mistake there, leaning on TJ Yeldon.
All right, next miss is Dante Pettis, 49ers receiver. His lone catch was for 35 yards. It looked pretty good early. It came on San Fran's first drive. Pick looked promising. What happened from there?
Yeah, Dante Pettis played almost every single snap that Jimmy Garoppolo played with Marquise Goodwin was out, and that's kind of what we expected. However, the price here, once again, was an issue, up at $4K, whereas guys like Quincy Enunwa and Kenny Galladay and Devin Funchess and Randall Cobb were only $600 or $700 more. So we're not saving enough money probably to go ahead and play a rookie wide receiver making his first career start. Probably a little thin there considering the price.
All right, and last one, correct me if I'm wrong, for the first time in Who'd I Miss On history, I think you're acknowledging a miss on defense. The Texans' defense had just 2 fantasy points, 1 sack. They allowed 100 rushing yards. What's your perception of Houston's D now after 2 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think the play was bad, whereas the other 2 plays that we talked about could be bad. I don't think the Houston defense play was bad. Blaine Gabbert was starting their top 3. Offensive tackles were out. We knew Clowney was out for the Texans, but they still had J.J. Watt, still had Whitney Merciless, and they were only 2,600. So I actually think that the Texans was a fine play. It just speaks to how variant team defense can be, generating interceptions, fumbles, defensive touchdowns, special teams touchdowns, can be somewhat random. So for that reason, I'm not upset with the play at all. I still think it was a good play, but it was certainly a pretty big miss there as they only scored 2 points.
All right, Levy, thanks a lot. Best of luck in week 3.
All right, thank you.
All right, that's Who'd I Miss On with Adam Levitan. Catch it each week of the NFL season right here on DK Live.
It's fall, so obviously we're talking nonstop about football.
No. Fall technically starts on Saturday.
Fall football. But we got a real treat right now. RotoWire's Jordan Cooper is here to give us a Champions League preview.
That's European football for all of you who did not know.
Football.
Jordan, hit us with your top picks for the first 6-game slate of the Champions League, please, starting with your pick for forward.
Well, at forward, I mean, the headlining match is going to be Liverpool versus PSG. That's going to be the one that's going to be paid the most attention. But, of course, as we see in daily fantasy, when 2 good teams face each other, sometimes it's kind of a black hole as far as the salary pricing is concerned because they're all expensive, and it's kind of hard to determine who's going to dominate possession. So the actual top implied team total on this slate comes from Napoli, who's traveling to Serbia to play Red Star Belgrade. Although it won't be a walk in the park, the fantasy point goodness should come from the wide players. That's either the fullbacks or their wingers. And at 9,600, Jose Callejon with his role on set pieces would be the safe floor option for the team. Insigne on the other side at 10-2 would be the slightly more upside option, but with so many people gravitating towards Neymar, Salah, and the Liverpool PSG game, I think the better play is to go for the team that actually is the highest favorite on the slate, and that's Napoli.
What about who you're taking in the midfield and which game you're targeting for that?
Well, in the midfield, you're going to have to go down salary-wise in order to fit in some of the high-priced options that you're going to want to play. And the best salary saver on the board should come to us from Monaco, although they're an underdog even playing at home because they've lost a lot of their players that we know and loved over the past 2 and 3 years. But with Ronnie Lopez being a doubt for this game, he's the primary set-piece taker for the team. Yuri Tielemans should be filling in. He's a central attacking midfielder. He's on the home side. He's only 3,700. And Atletico Madrid has shown the past couple of games that they are uncharacteristically leaky in the back. So although you may not be playing Tielemans at 3,700 for a goal, I think there should be enough offense from Monaco that he should easily pay off his salary and then allow you to fit in all the studs that you want.
All right, Jordan, I want you to talk defense to me. Dirty, dirty defense.
Jeez.
Which defender are you going with?
By far, the most owned player on this slate will come from Porto at 5,500. It's Alex Telles. They're playing on the road to Schalke, but Schalke has not looked good this season so far in league play. Porto should dominate the ball, and when we could find a defender that has a monopoly of set pieces from a team at 5,500, he probably should be priced 1,500 more, and with the amount of salary relief that you'll be able to get in the midfield, fitting him in shouldn't be an issue. And there's no one with a safer double-digit floor on the slate, especially one that's defender eligible, which means the clean sheet is always in play for the bonus. That The only reason that you wouldn't play him in GPP is because of ownership, but he should be a staple of all your cash lineups.
Finally, who's getting the nod in goal?
Ooh, good question.
Well, I think if you're not going to play Neymar, the highest upside on this slate is Alisson from Liverpool, playing at home, 4,800, a decreased price. So you're kind of hoping that PSG peppers him with shots and they still get the win and the clean sheet. But as far as safety is concerned, you may not want to go all the way up and pay for Ospina on the road. These road-favored goalkeepers I'm not a big fan of, but the cheapest home goalkeeper that's favored is Fernando Muslera, the Uruguayan keeper for Galatasaray. And Turkey is a very tough place to play for any team. So I still think Lokomotiv could give him a couple of shots to get 2 or 3 saves, as well as the upside for the win and the clean sheet bonus.
All right, thanks, Jordan. We appreciate the footy preview for all of you guys watching at home. Stick with us for a preview of the final leg of the FedEx Cup playoffs. Leg.
I'm Brendan Glasheen here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. The Eagles announced Monday quarterback Carson Wentz has been medically cleared and will start Sunday home against the Colts. Nice boost for the 1-1 Birds, but Wentz will work with a depleted wideout corpse. We learned Monday morning Mike Wallace is out indefinitely with an ankle injury. It could be season-ending. Mac Hollins is on IR, and it remains to be seen when Alshon Jeffrey will return post-shoulder surgery. Now, Wentz still has Zach Ertz, who is the priciest tight end for Week 3 at $6,800. Trying to save a buck or two? Well, Nelson Aguilar is down the list of wide receivers, $6,100. His value has been above average through 2 weeks, back-to-back games with 8 catches and double-digit targets. As far as rostering Wentz this week, I think there's no question he elevates all the players we just discussed. But as the 6th most expensive quarterback on the Week 3 slate, Wentz is a wait-and-see player. Let's see how he looks this week.
Great news, everybody. The golf returns this week. The final leg of the FedEx Cup playoffs. It's the Tour Championship, and we've got Reed Fowler and Jason Sobel of the Action Network here to talk about it.
By the way, you can catch Jason on the Action Network app on Android and iPhone right now. Reed, only 30 golfers in this field. How does that change the strategy for this contest versus others?
Yeah, so obviously this is a no-cut event. You have the 30 top-ranked from the FedEx Cup standings. What you have to do here is you're not really going to differentiate too much from golf because you only have 30 options. You can leave more salary on the table than usually, right? Usually I advise $300 to $400 at max of leaving that $50K salary. Where you want to differentiate and not go full bore with just spending everything. You can do that a little bit more now to create some of these different types of lineups. So it's a no-cut event, right? It's not like your WGCs or your majors. All of these guys can play. All of these guys have shown that they're really good. So my suggestion would be to potentially leave more salary on the table than usual.
Jason, what about you? How are you approaching this?
Yeah, what's up, guys? I just got to Atlanta, one of my favorite tournaments of the entire year, 30-man field, only the best of the best. So you start looking at making these lineups, and quite frankly, you're going to look at a whole bunch of superstars and not too many also-rans in this field, obviously, based on this being the top 30 on the FedEx Cup points list. So I think what you have to do is you have to be perfect this week. I don't know if the strategy necessarily changes, but I think the focus changes because, quite frankly, if you're picking 20% of the field and 6 men in a 30-man field, that's what you're going to be doing. So you need to get everything right. So I think you've got to do a little extra research and maybe go with a long shot here or there, but there aren't too many long shots to pick from. So it's going to be tough this week. I think this week is more tough than we've seen in previous weeks, even in these limited field FedEx Cup playoff events.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to kind of separate yourself from the field this week. Jason, how about Justin Rose? The number 1 player in the world, the most expensive player available this week, $11,400. How accurate is that price tag in your opinion?
Yeah, obviously coming off a playoff loss last week in Philadelphia, but became number 1 in the world for the first time. He's very intent on keeping that number at least through the remainder of the year. And this is a great track for him at Eastlake because he's finished from 2012 through 2015, finished 2nd, 6th, 4th, and 2nd yet again. Really good track record on this course. The ball strikers paradise out here, and I think that Justin Rose is primed for another big week coming off that playoff loss. So, yeah, he's the highest priced guy, but for good reason. I would throw him in the lineup without fear this week.
Yeah, he's got the best odds to win this tournament. And Reed, Rose remains in control of his own destiny. One of 5 players with, DeChambeau, Tony Finau, Dustin Johnson, and Justin Thomas. They'll automatically win this cup if they win this tournament. But, $11,400. You like that price tag for Rose?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at who's playing the best at this time, it's him, DeChambeau, and some other guys, right, that are up there in those top 5. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's, like Jason was mentioning, he's finished runner-up here twice, and he's, played quite a bit over those, 6 to 8 year span. He's played extremely well. He's hitting the ball. Jason mentioned it. It's a ball strikers. You want to attack the strokes game, ball striking stat. Off the tee is something that you also want to attack as well. And who hits the ball the best and who hits the ball in the fairway? It's Justin Rose. So at 11-4, I'm not too worried about it. You'll see that high price tag. You might see some depressed ownership. Again, you're not getting too cute, right? Because there's only 30 golfers. But yeah, absolutely.
All right, you can pay up for Big Cat at $9,500. Is Tiger Woods somebody you're going to be looking to roster, Reed?
You know what? I mean, I think it's nice in theory, but I don't think I am. At 9,500, there's obviously places that you can go elsewhere. Again, I just mentioned it, right? Ball striking and off the tee. Ball striking, obviously, Tiger is someone that you go to, but off the tee, if you look at him over the last 24 rounds, he's, I think 22nd, so not the worst in the field. But if you go on Donald Ross courses over that same time frame, he becomes 4th worst off the tee. Now, that's not the only thing that you have to do well here. You have to score on the par 4s. Right stroke gain approach is huge, and he's one of the best. At 9,500, a little pricey for me, so I'm going to stay away.
Jason, Big Cat, you looking to roster?
I'm glad Reed said all that because I completely disagree. I love him this week. And one of the things that really has me picking Tiger does nothing to do with the numbers. And Reed mentioned the numbers there, and that's all well and good. I'm using the old eyeball test. I've been out on the tour the last few weeks. I've seen Tiger Woods. What's impressed me the most is the fact that he seems to be building up momentum while most of these players are wearing down at the end of the season. I think having those couple of years off and not playing during those injuries, I think it really has propelled him to work a little bit harder late in the summer and really be geared up for the end of the season a little bit better than some of the other players who have gone through this year after year after year. So he is not taking this trip to the Tour Championship this week for granted, and because of that, I really like him this week.
I love that.
Use your eyes, Reed. It's called the eye test, dude. That's
his back is holding
you get
up.
so caught up in numbers,
His back
Reed.
is holding up fine now, Reed. He's in great shape.
I know. I mean, that's great. I think you want to use the eye test. I think, if I'm going to contradict myself, that's the one thing, right? We can have analysis paralysis when we look at the stats too much. I mean, that's why Jason's on the show, right? He's seeing these guys up front. If he's seeing something on the range, you see something like that, then yeah, I mean, Tiger Woods is arguably the best golfer to, grace us over the last 25 years. So someone like his talent could easily pan out. In terms of DFS and how I want to build my lineups, not so much, but yeah, I mean, Big Cat's Big Cat.
All right,
Big
sounds
Cat.
like you have changed your opinion, and you will be paying up for
Jason.
Tiger Woods at
You
$9,500.
Reed's opinion.
Winner of the last tournament, though, that was Keegan Bradley. He's just north of 6,000. How big of a bargain is this, Jason? I know we think of momentum in these tournaments, but we have had this week off in between.
Yeah, he's got that momentum. I think he needed that week off. I haven't seen a smile on Keegan Bradley's face that wide in 6 years since his last victory. He's looked frustrated for most of the past half decade or so. So good to see him back in the winner's circle, but I don't think I'm picking him again. If I'm looking for a low-budget guy, I spend up a little bit. Another $600 in the lineup can get you Paul Casey, who I really like this week. He's played well at Eastlake in the past, and if I only have 6,200, I'm actually going down just a little bit. At 61 right there is Kyle Stanley, who I think is a terrific value pick for this week as well.
Reed, are you chasing Keegan Bradley at $6,200? Do you like Jason? You like someone maybe a little ahead, a little behind him in the salary department?
Yeah, Keegan has always been a guy this season that people have been on when he's in spots, when he's in that 7 to 7.5K range. Like he's a great player. He's obviously a major winner. His putting has always gotten the best of him, and so towards the end of tournaments, we've seen Keegan go full Keegan and totally just blow up on the last 18. So I'd rather go elsewhere. There's some guys like Mark Leishman and Bubba Watson that are around him that I really like. Bubba Watson has a really good track record at Eastlake. He loves the Donald Ross courses. If this is Target golf, right? Bubba is one of those guys that if you find a Bubba track, you play him. So if I'm taking a flyer in that 6K range, Mark Leishman is continually and always has been one of the most underrated golfers. And guys have said it on tour, that Leishman has been underrated because he hasn't won a major yet. Sometimes in these big tournaments, he doesn't come through. We saw him at Augusta. So he's a guy that I'm looking at as well, as opposed to Keegan.
All right, that'll do it, golf guys. Thanks for the time. We appreciate it. Next, we're playing Tears of Joy on the Baseball Diamonds.
I'm Brendan Glasheen here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Hate to be so blatant, but man, the Buffalo Bills stink. They could smell worse if LaShawn McCoy misses Week 3's contest in Minnesota. Ian Rappaport of NFL Network reports McCoy underwent additional tests on his injured ribs Monday. He avoided a fracture, which is excellent news for him. In a previous report, Rap Sheet said McCoy will attempt to play through this injury. Hey, kudos to him for wanting to play through pain on a bad team. But regardless of whether McCoy plays or not, the 30-year-old hasn't produced. He's managed just 89 total yards on 21 touches, plus no touchdowns in Buffalo's first 2 games. At 5,100 versus the ruthless Vikings run defense, Shady is a definite fadey in Week 3.
Welcome back to our baseball panel. DK Live's Greg Ehrenberg and Phantom Sports Adam and Kuda. Guys, help us out with the MLB Tiers contest.
Need lots of help. Let's start by looking at Tier 2. Who do you like here and why, Adam?
I actually like Alex Bregman, and I don't think there's really another choice here. Remember, Bregman's the first third baseman in the history of baseball. All those years, 30 homers, 50 doubles. The guy crushes lefties. It's 26 points higher against left-handed pitching versus right-handed pitching. On-base percentage over 400. The guy hits 36 points higher at home, 61 RBIs to 39, 49 points better in terms of on-base percentage. And just this year against the Mariners, he's hitting .339 and 62 at-bats. Give me Bregman. I wrote about him last week, potentially being the AL MVP. Think about all the injuries to the Astros and who's been the stabilizing factor the entire season. That's Bregman. So I don't think this is a contest here. Give me Alex Bregman for Tier 2.
Man, a potential AL MVP in Alex Bregman got me convinced. What about you, Greg? Is that a clear cut in Tier 2?
I do like Bregman here. I don't think he's the AL MVP this year just because there's been so many other ridiculous candidates. Like I would have Trout, Jose Ramirez, and Mookie Betts all ahead of him. But in most seasons, as good as Bregman's been this year, he probably would be right up there for me. I mean, just to echo some of the stuff that...
So are you taking him in Tier 2?
What's that?
Are you taking him in Tier 2 tonight?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Go ahead and tell us why. Can you add anything else to it?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at Bregman at home this year, he's much better than on the road, 184 WRC+. He makes good use of the short porch in left field. Most of his home runs have come at home this year. And then Wade LeBlanc hasn't really pitched as well as his ERA indicates this year. 3.56 ERA, but 4.37 FIP. So that kind of suggests some regression coming his way.
All right, Greg, Tier 4, we got people like Matt Carpenter, Freddie Freeman, Scooter Gennett, Eugenio Suarez, Starling Marte, JT Realmuto, and Michael Conforto. So who are you taking?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Freddie Freeman here. To me, I'm in between Freddie Freeman and Matt Carpenter. I think they're the 2 best hitters in this tier. I'm leaning towards Freeman, though, just because I think that Fultonavich is a better pitcher than Mikolas. So I think it's a better matchup for Freeman. If you look at Fulton this year, 2.66 ERA and a 3.26 FIP. So I'll go with Freeman, but it's by a hair. I think either one of them are reasonable plays.
Adam, I saw you nodding in agreement there. Are you also going with Freeman?
He's on board.
I'm nodding because he's got very good points here, and I do like both options, as both are probably top 5 MVP candidates in the NL. But tonight, I'm actually going to throw a little bit of a curveball. I'll go Suarez of the Reds. Reason being, the guy crushes left-handed pitching. 336 batting average against left-handed pitching. Against the Brewers themselves, 350 batting average, 3 homers, 13 RBIs. He's going up against Wade Miley, average lefty at best in a hitter's ballpark. He also hits much better on the road, 23 points higher on the road. So while most people are going Carpenter and Freeman, and I can't fault you if you do, my gut is telling me Suarez, big performance tonight, keeps the trend going against the Brewers.
How about down in Tier 6? Who is your man, Greg?
So I'm going to go with Altuve here. Actually, something that Adam said earlier that I do agree with is I do think the Astros are a good stack tonight, and I think that probably the stack with the most upside for the least amount of ownership, if that makes sense. So Jose Altuve, I just think he's too good of a player to be buried all the way in Tier 6. He was the AL MVP last season. Even though he hasn't been quite as good this year, he's been better lately, 14.5 DK fantasy point average over his last 4 games, and still a positive matchup against Wade LeBlanc.
All right, so George Springer, Jose Altuve, they're both in there. Who else do you like?
So for me, the pick I'm going with is Anthony Rendon of the Nationals. I did like the Altuve and Springer possibilities. I mentioned LeBlanc stacking against him earlier. But Rendon's the guy for me. Think about this. 6 of his last 11 games, multi-hit games. In one of those 5 that he didn't have multi-hits, he had 3 walks and 3 runs. So he's still producing value. The guy crushes right-handed pitching even better than left-handed pitching, 25 points higher. 14 home runs versus righties, 6 versus lefties. On the road, he's much better here than at home. And against the Marlins in Florida this season, I think he's 5 for 11. So you want a guy that's hot. This guy's red hot, consistent, not going to give you an offer. I like Rendon here as a play as the Nationals try to stay in the race. And he's also hitting cleanup tonight, so that's also something to mention. So he'll have some guys in front of him on base and hopefully have a big night for everybody coming out of Tier 6.
Nice.
All right, well, before we let you guys go, hit us with those slate-approved picks for the 12-game slate tonight. Greg, start us off. Who you taking?
Yeah, Zach Wheeler, we talked about him earlier. I don't really think there's a ton of great pitching options tonight, and amongst the high-price guys, I definitely think that Wheeler is the best play.
Adam, what about you? Who's your slate-approved?
I love Wheeler too, but as we talked about earlier, when you go high on a guy like Christian Yelich, you need someone to kind of save that money. And my bet tonight is Brandon Lowe of the Rays. Top prospect. He's getting his playing time now. You slot him in at second base. $3,800, not a bad play. And then you go and pay up for a guy like Wheeler, who I love tonight, and Yelich, and then you work your line up that way. I think Lowe has some ability there. You got to remember that he's actually hitting much better recently. It's in a decent lineup, hitting 5th tonight. They're again going up against a Texas pitcher with an ERA over 5 in a hitter's ballpark. So I like Brandon Lowe tonight. It's a little cost-cutting move, but good so that you can pay up for the other guys in your lineup.
Awesome. Adam, it was good having you on the program, man. Good seeing you. Greg, you as well. Appreciate both your work tonight. So now, everyone, take a little break. Sit back, relax, and feel the Pat Mayo experience.
All pertaining to David Johnson. What do we do with David Johnson? David Johnson is a big worry. Would you even want to buy low? I would want to buy low on David Johnson. I don't know what they're doing in Arizona. They look putrid, and I don't understand how Arizona can be down by so much the entire game, and David Johnson finishes the contest with 0 targets. That makes no sense. You have to feel like they're going to adjust to this.
I don't think they're necessarily going to. I think it's slight panic mode, honestly, because this is the McCoy situation. It's the McCoy as the offensive coordinator is not passing to the running back and not using him such. We kind of said, yeah, it'll be fine. It'll be different because he knows this time. But you go back to the Melvin Gordon situation. Melvin Gordon basically doubled his targets, receptions, and yards once he left. And now he's come over and he's doing the same thing to David Johnson. He just doesn't pass to the running back. And I said, I agree with you. I think it's crazy. I think there's enough people out there that say it's crazy, but sometimes coaches obviously aren't listening to us. So
no,
I have to say that I am slightly concerned. I could see a scenario this year because how poor the offense is. Now, I also think having Josh Rosen at quarterback would help. But between how bad Bradford's looked and he's not thrown to the running back and there's not designed plays, he's not even lining up in the line of scrimmage. David Johnson, I'm legitimately, I give myself a 4 out of 10 on concern level.
4 out of 10? That's not out of this world concerning. 4 out of 10. You're bridging on panic mode. Now, if you drafted inside the top 5 or like number 3 or 2 overall, then we got substantial problems. Fortunately, he's healthy, so that's always a good thing. He's outscoring Le'Veon Bell right now, which is really nice. But okay, so guys, who would you rather have rest of the season? Gurley or David Johnson?
Gurley. He's not even a question at this point.
Just say yes or no. I know the answer is Gurley. Alvin Kamara or David Johnson?
Kamara.
Kareem Hunt or David Johnson? I'd rather have David Johnson than that. I'd rather gamble on the upside of David Johnson because we know
that's
about Hunt.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what my answer would be.
Okay, Melvin Gordon or Johnson? I'd want Melvin Gordon.
I'm taking Melvin Gordon at this point.
Zeke or DJ? I got this one wrong. The answer is Zeke.
It is Zeke.
Saquon Barkley or David Johnson? It looks like Saquon Barkley is everything we thought David Johnson could be in this crappy Arizona offense. Saquon Barkley is in the Giants offense.
Yeah, that PPR night last night was disgusting. Yeah, so it's Saquon Barkley.
Jordan Howard or David Johnson?
I'll take David Johnson for the upside.
Christian McCaffrey or David Johnson? I think I'd take McCaffrey.
In a full PPR, I'm taking McCaffrey, and a standard, I would still go David Johnson.
I don't even know about that. I mean, I still think that the value for David Johnson is more pronounced in a PPR. Because if he's not being the king of PPR scoring, then he's just not going to be that good, because his standard numbers were good, don't get me wrong, but if he's not going to score a bunch of touchdowns and gain a bunch on the ground, he has to do it through the receiving game. So if anything's going to equal itself out, he needs to be someone that averages like 5-6 receptions a game.
Well, see, that's where I'm saying I think the upside, I think the offense is better than this. I know the Arizona Cardinals are one of the worst 5 teams in the NFL, but again, they're going to change to Josh Rosen at some point, and it's probably coming soon. Sam Bradford can't keep playing they can't keep going back to him. The whole point was they thought they might even have a potential to start Rosen week 1, and it was one of those, hey, you know what? We spent all that money, but that's sometimes what happens, and you drafted the player, and he's better. But these first 2 games, I would be surprised if Bradford goes out there week 3, first of all, if he's even out there week 3, and he plays like this, Josh Rosen's going to be starting by week 4.
One more block to go, and saving this sweet, savory Monday Night Showdown segment for last. Hello again to Reed, Rosalie, and Ian.
It's the Seahawks and Bears tonight. Who's your captain's pick, Reed? Talking 1.5 times the salary, but 1.5 times the points.
Ooh, I'm taking Mitchell Trubisky at 15,300. Like, it's easy to think that Russ Wilson potentially gets his garbage points, but look at Seattle's defense. They are completely depleted. They don't have their linebackers. Their secondary is obviously a question mark with Earl Thomas there, but obviously wanting to be out of there. That defense is completely void of any leaders, anybody who has speed to cover these guys. Mitch Trubisky, like Matt Nagy, comes from the Andy Reid coaching tree and train of thought of, let's get our first 15 to 20 plays ready, pre-cooked into it. I think they start out fast. I think Mitchell Trubisky and all the Bears are in good spots here. So give me Mitchell Trubisky at that 15-3. Gives you some savings for some other players.
Rosalie, who is your captain's pick? 1.5 times the points.
Isn't it weird? I am actually on the Bear train with Reed here.
Whoa.
This is weird. This is weird, but I'm going Jordan Howard here at 15K. You know what? The Seattle defense just gave up almost 30 points to the running backs in Denver, and Howard is the focal point. They're making it clear that he is the focal point of that offense. 20 touches last week, including 5 of 5 receptions, which is tied for the most receptions on that team. So he's catching the ball more than any of the wide receivers. And I think he could have a 30-point game. And at time and a half, that's very, very pretty.
Yeah, we like those points. Ian, what do you think? Are you also on the Bear train?
I'm not. The disrespect here for Russell Wilson is kind of alarming.
Yeah,
People
ridiculous. That's just what Reed does, though, dude.
I know he's 18,000. He's the most expensive guy there, but hey, we're paying up for the 1.5 player, so I think that's the spot to spend your money. And look, I mean, he only had 5 rushing yards last week. He's gone over 500 plus in 4 of his last 5 years, so that's something that I think we'll see more and more as the season goes on. But at the end of the day, I know Baldwin's out. The whole team's banged up, but it's Russell Wilson. He's going to do Russell Wilson things. He threw 3 touchdowns last week in Denver. We were talking about something named Will Dissly on this show. I mean, we actually have questions about that guy. So I'm all over Russell Wilson, even in a tough matchup. I'm taking the best player on the field.
Ian, who would you consider a good value pick tonight?
Yeah, so I'm sticking on the Seahawks. I'm going C.J. Procise. He's towards the bottom of the bin. Look, he only played 12% of snaps last week. He's basically their number 3 running back behind Rashad Penny and Chris Carson. But we talked about all these injuries at receiver for the Seahawks, and Procise is already getting rumored to basically start playing part-time receiver in addition to running back duties. He played plenty of wide receiver at Notre Dame, and this is a guy that averaged the most yards per touch in the league in 2016. So, on a 1-game slate, you got to be different, and I'm riding C.J. Procise tonight.
Rosalie, who's your value pick? Heading over to the Seahawks side?
Yeah, I think we need to remind Ian that, Russell Wilson gets those rushing yards, but I'm afraid most of them are going to be side to side and backwards tonight with Khalil Mack coming out.
You don't get points for those, Ian.
You don't get points for that.
Fair enough.
Wow.
But I am staying with the Bears. Again, I'm so confused by myself right now. But I like Taylor Gabriel here. 5K. He was 5 for 5 for 25 yards. And like Reed said, Chubbs is going to have to throw it somewhere. And Burton was 1 for 6 last week. And so I don't think that he's going to trust him as much. I think we're going to see more Taylor Gabriel tonight, and he could be some sneaky touchdowns in there for him too.
Reed, I need some value. A lot of people watch right now on Facebook. They're like, I need a value pick here.
They're like, give us the value, Reed.
They want to hear what you have to say,
yeah,
Reed.
Emerson, you make everyone feel comfortable. Yeah, I'm going Anthony Miller. We saw him, a lot of preseason hype on this guy. He's 4,600. First game, he only saw 3 targets against Green Bay. That game got a little out of hand in terms of what Chicago wanted to do. They established a run. They established what they wanted to do early on in the game. Then they kind of got away from themselves. But at 4,600, look, I just talked about how the Seattle defense across the middle is void. So Ken Norton, these guys are trying to probably mask that, losing those guys with some zone coverages, and that opens up the middle. You would think Trey Burton, you would think these guys across the middle. Taylor Gabriel could get an uptick, but give me Anthony Miller as one of these slot guys that's really come into his own. Again, 3 targets last week, 54% of the snaps. I think that does increase in terms of what he can do. And if he can fall into the end zone, that's extreme upside.
And what about using a kicker or defense special teams in tonight's contest, Rosalie? What do you think?
You know what? With the way the kickers have been going in this league lately, no way.
At the Browns.
Right? So you don't know if they're going to show up or not. But I guess it's true after half, too. You don't know if the defense is going to show up after the half. But, yeah, if I were, I would go with the Bears D. They had 14 points last week against Green Bay. They're about 4K, though, so it's pretty expensive. But I think we're going to see a lot. That Seattle line is just so bad. And we're going to see Russell Wilson on the run a lot. I don't know if they'll actually get a couple of sacks on him, but they might get some tipped balls for some interceptions, run back for a touchdown. So I like the Bears D.
Ian, what do you think?
I'm looking at both defenses. I mean, I don't think there's a problem with rostering both defenses and both kickers. I mean, they're the most, when we're talking about the showdown slate, they're the most secure positions we have. I mean, other than a freak kicker injury, we're at least going to guarantee they're going to be out there for 4 quarters, and the defense is going to be. So even that level of security is somewhat good. And this is a game which is over-under is only at 42.5 points right now. It's down actually 1 point from where it opened. So, certainly we talked about how bad the Seahawks offensive line is, and the Bears have plenty of talent on defense. But on the other side of the ball, I mean, I'm not convinced by Mitchell Trubisky yet either. I mean, we saw him, rack up some scoreless yards last week against the Packers. And, I don't know if the Seahawks are necessarily that much easier of a matchup. So I'm all about the defenses and special teamers tonight.
Reed, you all about the defenses and special teams too?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, unless you're Greg Zuerlein or you're Sean McVay, where you're just going to go for 2, and you're okay with that, right? And you have so many weapons on offense, you're going to roster these defenses and kickers. Like Monday night, we saw the Falcons only get about 10 DK fantasy points, so it wasn't too good in terms of rostering those types of defenses. Obviously, they got hurt. We saw all these guys being fatigued, but now you're in week 2. These guys got an extra day of rest. That does a lot for a defense especially. So, yeah, I'm totally with Ian here with rostering both kickers and special teams. Just because in terms of also what you want to do and being different in this one-game slate, you're not going to see a lot of lineups with all 4 of those entities in there. So I do like that.
How about we got about a minute and a half here. How about like a slate-approved pick for tonight, Reed?
I mean, I didn't even know Mitchell Trubisky had a nickname as Trubs that Rosalie was talking about, but I'm about to go Mitchell Trubisky here.
Chubbs.
Ian, what about you? You got like a must-play, must-start tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to go Jerome Brown for the Seahawks. I think the hot picks are Tyler Lockett and Brandon Marshall, but we've seen Brown out there the same amount of times and through wide receiver sets. So go ahead and differentiate your lineup and get the same guy for lower ownership. That's going to be out there.
What about you, fantasy girl?
Yeah, Chubbs, he lets me call him that. I think. So, you know what? I went all Bears on the other side. So I got to give some love to Lockett. I really like his matchup. I think that Wilson really trusts him to catch the ball, and he's going to be looking somewhere to throw it. And so I think Lockett has a big game tonight.
Wow. Good stuff, everybody. Good luck tonight in showdown mode. Thanks for joining us. Look forward to seeing all 3 of your beautiful mugs tomorrow.
Yeah. All right, so we got about 30 seconds left. Did you learn anything, Emerson?
Yeah, that the Patriots just got better with Josh Gordon. And once Week 5 rolls around. Again, it's going to be
Yeah.
Gordon, Edelman, Hogan, and some guy named Rob Gronkowski.
It's pretty crazy. So this has been The Sweat. We learned a lot of things on The Sweat. I'm Jessie Coffield. He's Emerson Lotzia, and we're both going to be back here tomorrow at 6 o'clock, so be sure to tune in. Facebook Live, YouTube, all kinds of places.
Yeah, in the app, right?
On the app,
Maybe.
probably.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Doodle-oo.
See you tomorrow.